Hey guys, so it's 2026, and we're entering a new year for Nintendo, so I thought it would be interesting to make some predictions for what games and events could happen this year. And Nintendo has been going through a lot of changes lately. We recently got a new console with the Switch 2, and that will be entering its second year in just a few months. There's also some new leadership at Nintendo of America specifically, with Devin Pritchard as the president now, and there's also gonna be some milestone anniversaries for a lot of different Nintendo franchises this year, like Zelda, Metroid, Pikmin, Pokemon, Animal Crossing, and even Donkey Kong. There's quite a lot of series that could be getting some kind of release or content this year, and I definitely think that's worth keeping in mind. But it's also worth keeping in mind that we already know several games that are releasing this year on both the Switch 1 and Switch 2, so I wanted to predict release dates, or at least release windows or months for some of these games, since we only know exact release dates for a couple of them. But I wanted to go through each month and kind of predict what will happen. Starting with this month, January, I don't really think we're gonna hear much. I think basically what has already been announced is set in stone. We might get an interesting NSO release on GameCube or Nintendo 64, Game Boy Advance. I feel like that's really gonna be the most interesting announcement, aside from updates on existing games like Mario Tennis Fever, Yoshi, and other things. Or Rhythm Heaven, I really hope that game gets some news as well. But we know that the Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 edition is releasing very soon, and that's really probably gonna be the only release for this month. I kinda doubt that they're gonna do anything else besides that. January is usually a pretty quiet month for Nintendo, so I think this is really gonna be the only thing that happens. And it's still exciting because this is like the most content we've gotten in New Horizons for 4 years. Actually, this year it's gonna be 5 years. Technically still 4 years because like that last update was like at the end of 2021. But I'm looking forward to it. And it's nice that the update will be free, even for people who don't have that Switch 2 edition. So I really like the way that they're handling this. Ideally, the Switch 2 edition, like, shouldn't be a paid upgrade, like in an ideal world, but I honestly don't mind too much that it's $5. I don't think that's the end of the world. I think that's relatively tame compared to other Switch 2 editions. So I think that's fine. I'll be picking up that Switch 2 edition and playing the update. I actually did play Animal Crossing on stream, like, with the New Year's celebration, so I have been getting into it a little more lately. It is my most played Switch 1 game, so I definitely have a lot of stuff in New Horizons, so I kind of need to get back to playing it fairly soon for the Switch 2 edition and update. Moving on to February, we're getting Mario Tennis Fever, and I don't really need to elaborate on this game too much, since it's probably gonna get a trailer any day now, and I'll give my thoughts on it there, but I will say, it does look good so far, and it looks a lot better than the Switch 1 Mario sports games. But we're also getting Virtual Boy on Nintendo Switch Online, and we're probably gonna get a Direct in February as well, and I think they'll announce like a few games there, but I won't really get into my predictions yet. Aside from a couple things, I think they'll show off Joy-Con 2 colors, as well as a content update for Mario Kart World. I don't think we're gonna see DLC yet. I feel like releasing DLC this soon after a game that's $80 is not the best for Nintendo's reputation right now, so I would say we're gonna get free content updates first, and then like DLC a couple years down the line. For content updates, I could see things like characters, costumes, carts, music tracks, things like that. They might release them in like a few different waves, like we'll get like a Donkey Kong one, maybe a Mario Galaxy themed one, different things like that, but I think that would be pretty cool if they added some content to that game. But we're also getting a Pokemon Presents. I don't even need to say that's likely, because that is like 1000% happening in February. There is no way that a Pokemon Presents isn't happening, especially since it's going to be the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. But they're going to announce Gen 10 there. I feel like that's very likely, and I'll get into what I think Gen 10 will be like later in this video when I get to my November predictions. But I think we're also finally gonna see Pokemon Gens 1 through 3 coming to Switch Online, but I think they'll drip feed them. We're gonna get Red, Blue, and Yellow in February, Gold, Silver, Crystal in April, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald in June, and Fire Red, Leaf Green in August. I think they're gonna spread these out to where we get them like once every couple months. So like just kind of building up to like Gen 10. So I think I definitely think there's a possibility that it will finally happen. I know it seems unlikely that we'll get the older Pokemon games on Nintendo Switch Online, but this has to be the time. Like, I feel like they've been sitting on these games until this moment. So I think it would be ridiculous if they didn't release them. I don't think they're ever going to release them if they don't release them on NSO this year, but we'll see. They might release them in a collection and like, sell it separately for, like, $80 or something, but, I think they're going to release these games either way, either if it's in a collection or on Switch Online. But moving on to March, we knew about Pokemon Pokopia, which is unfortunately going to be on a game keycard. That really sucks. But I also think we're going to get Yoshi and the Mysterious Book later in March. It seems like we get these types of games in March, either Kirby or Yoshi, Peach, different games like that, kind of like a game that's kind of geared more towards like a casual audience that's also kind of like a platformer as well, is usually releasing around March. That's kind of how Nintendo does things a lot of the time. So I think Yoshi and the Mysterious Book will release like sometime in March. I feel like that's kind of the safest bet for that game. And also, that would be right before the Galaxy movie as well, and Yoshi is probably going to have like some sort of significant role in the movie, like from what we've seen with like the merch leaks. So it would make sense to release a Yoshi game right around the time the Galaxy movie is releasing. But moving on to April, we're getting the Galaxy movie, and I also think they're going to release the Mario Wonder Switch 2 edition right around the time the movie releases. Maybe like a week after, or like the same week. I don't know if they do it the same week. That might be a bit too much. But sometime around when the movie releases, I think they're going to do that Switch 2 edition for Wonder. I think that would make quite a lot of sense. They could tack on an advertisement right before the movie starts, like they usually do. So I think that would make a lot of sense. And I also, this might seem a bit crazy since it makes April a bit stacked. Well, actually, not really. I literally just said that Pokopia and Mysterious Book could release in March, and this is just a Switch 2 edition along with another game. Now that I'm thinking about it, no, it does make sense to release another game in April, but Tomodachi Life Living the Dream could release in April. I think it would make a lot of sense to place it here. It could also be March as well, but I think Yoshi is just slightly more likely for that that kind of slot for March, just due to how like Nintendo has historically released games like that. So I think Tomodachi Life could be April, and I think it will also get a Switch 2 edition as well. I know it didn't get a Switch 2 edition announcement in the September Direct, but I think they'll announce that in the February Direct. They might have been waiting a little more until like the development of the Switch 2 edition was complete, or like they had enough to work off of to show like that upgrade. Maybe I guess they were like still working on the upgrade around the September Direct, and then they could show that in the February Direct. That's kind of like my kind of theory behind it if they're going to do a Switch 2 edition for the game. I think it would be weird if they don't do a Switch 2 edition for the game. I mean, I know a Switch 2 edition is literally just like it sometimes can literally just be an upgrade, but I also think it's like a marketing opportunity for Nintendo as well, to kind of push the game also as a Switch 2 game, and kind of have it on store shelves as a Switch 2 game. I just think that would make a lot of sense. I think that would push the sales of the game a little more. So I'm hoping that it gets a Switch 2 edition at least. At the very least, a Switch 2 update for the game. Maybe they'll like slap a sticker on it in stores and it will say like, looks better on Switch 2, or gets an upgrade on Switch 2 or something like that. But moving on to May, we have another Switch 1 game, Rhythm Heaven Groove. As I honestly kind of want this game to be released a little earlier than May, just due to my bias in the fact that I really like Rhythm Heaven, and I'm really looking forward to this game. But I think May is probably the most likely release date for this. And I think it will also get a Switch 2 edition as well. Like, I mean, we literally haven't seen this game since it was announced last March. It's been nearly a year since we've seen anything from this game, which is kind of crazy considering the fact that it's Rhythm Heaven. But I think it's definitely possible that we can get a Switch 2 edition for this, with whatever trailer they show of this game next, they could, like, kind of announce the Switch 2 edition alongside this. And I think a Switch 2 edition would actually make a lot of sense, as this seems like a game that could run at 120 FPS on the Switch 2. Like, Rhythm Heaven really isn't a demanding game, or at least it doesn't seem like it would be demanding. We really don't know yet, but considering the fact that it's developed by part of the WarioWare team, and the WarioWare games on Switch 1 aren't very demanding, I think this could definitely run at 120 FPS on the Switch 2, and I think this would be a great game to run at 120 FPS due to, like, how precise you have to be. I know you're kind of, like, it's more about the sound than anything, but I think the visuals matching up perfectly would also be nice as well if that was in 120 FPS. So, and also mouse controls as well. They could have, like, some kind of mouse, like, mini game or something, or, like, exclusive mouse games on the Switch 2. I could see that happening as well. Same goes for, like, Tomodachi Life. I could see a Switch 2 edition that, like, has, like, mouse controls and everything for that game. But moving on to June, I think we could get Splatoon Raiders this month. I think June just makes a lot of sense for that. I would say either June or July, but I think June is slightly more likely considering the fact that it was announced, like, way back, in the summer of last year. So I think June makes a lot of sense for that. It could even be May as well. Maybe they could squeeze it alongside Rhythm Heaven Groove, though I hope not, because I want Rhythm Heaven Groove to do well. But Splatoon Raiders in June just makes a lot of sense to me, considering how Splatoon is usually a summer, or, like, late spring / summer release. And Splatoon 3 technically counts as summer, I would say, even though that's kind of pushing it a little bit, because, like, most of September is still the summer. But actually, I forgot when Splatoon 3 released. Actually, let me look if that was summer. Yeah, it was summer. Okay. It would have been a little silly if it released, like, at the very end of September 2022. But yeah, Splatoon is usually, like, a summer thing, so I think June makes a lot of sense. And I also think we're gonna get a big direct, like we usually do in June. Again, I know we didn't get one, like, last year, but that was probably due to the fact that the Switch 2 launched. But I think they could announce the Metroid and Zelda 40th anniversaries in this direct. We could get a teaser for the Zelda movie, like we got a teaser for the Mario Galaxy movie in the September direct. And I think we could also get shadow drops on NSO for Metroid Prime 2 and Twilight Princess on GameCube. I know that sounds like a lot, but Nintendo does sometimes shadow drop some pretty big things every once in a while, so I think 2 GameCube games, like, shadow dropped after that direct could be something that's, like, slightly plausible, even though it's kind of unlikely, but I could see either one of those games coming to NSO this year. And I think 3D Mario could be teased, but I don't think it will be released until spring 2027 or later, because I actually have some other ideas in mind for how holiday 2026 could play out for Nintendo. Moving on to July, I think we're gonna get Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave that month. I actually misremembered and thought that it got a spring 2026 release window, but no, it was actually a 2026 release window in general, so July is definitely on the table. I believe that's also when Fire Emblem Three Houses released. It was either June or July. It had to be July 2019 because Mario Maker released June of that year. So I think July is definitely possible for Fortune's Weave, but we'll have to see. I'm definitely looking forward to that game because I've been getting into Fire Emblem over the past couple of years. Like, I initially got into it with Engage and then played Awakening. Now I'm gonna play Three Houses before Fortune's Weave releases. So I'm really looking forward to Fortune's Weave. And I also think we're gonna get, like, a little 45th anniversary of Donkey Kong event in Bonanza, or just, like, some kind of little acknowledgement. Maybe Nintendo will just forget about it and post about Groose again like they did back in 2021. But they gotta do something. Like, they've been, like, doing this whole big renaissance of Donkey Kong lately. So I definitely expect them to at least acknowledge Donkey Kong's anniversary. Maybe they'll even do, like, a Game & Watch for Donkey Kong, like what they did for the Mario and Zelda anniversaries a few years ago. Actually, now that I think about it, that makes a lot of sense, honestly. Maybe they'll reveal that in like the direct alongside like the Metroid and Zelda anniversaries, and then they'll release that in July. But I also think we're gonna get like a little event in Bonanza as well. Maybe they'll do like something slightly bigger than what they usually do for like the statue events in Emerald Rush. But I definitely think at least if we get like a regular like event in Emerald Rush, it might be something like Mario or Jumpman along with Donkey Kong Jr. or 8-Bit Donkey Kong as the statues, or also like 8-Bit Pauline as well. So I definitely think those are possible, but we'll have to see. Moving on to August, I think we're gonna get not really anything in terms of major game releases, but I think we'll get at least one Switch 2 edition. And my prediction for that is Mario & Luigi Brothership, and I think it will get like a new campaign themed around Bowser Jr. and Buddy, but it will still have the regular turn-based gameplay. It won't be like Bowser's Minions or Bowser Jr.'s Journey or anything like that. It will still have like the regular battle system, but you'll play as Bowser Jr. and Buddy instead, and it will kind of have their respective moves that they could do. I guess for Buddy, they'd have to make up moves. But I feel like it could take place during the events of the game, and it could also feature like some new characters as well, and also maybe like they could bring back some existing characters from the Mario and Luigi series as well. I think it would be cool if the main villain was like a Zocket or Reclusa controlled mid-bus. He somehow got into Concordia and was kind of causing some trouble there. I think that would be pretty cool. And I think it would be cool if they also hinted towards the next game in some way as well. They wouldn't have to do much, but something like on the level of like Fawful's dialogue and Partners in Time would be interesting. But moving on to September, I think we could get Metroid 6, basically the next 2D Metroid game developed by Mercury Steam. It's been 5 years since Dread, and it's also going to be Metroid's 40th anniversary, so I think a new 2D Metroid game would definitely be nice, and it would also kind of be nice for the Metroid fanbase as well, after that controversy of Prime 4. So I think Metroid 6 is definitely possible, and I know some people are possibly thinking about a Super Metroid remake as well, which would be nice, but that game is already on Nintendo Switch Online, so I think it's kind of unlikely. Nintendo doesn't usually remake or remaster games that are on Switch Online. And I think there could also be some amiibo figures as well. They usually release new figures with Metroid, so I definitely think that's possible. But moving on, I think we could see another game in September, and I think this could happen later in the month, but this is kind of a wildcard prediction, and I think it could be a sequel to Kirby Canvas Curse and Rainbow Curse. This just makes quite a lot of sense, as the next 3D Kirby game probably won't happen until next year with the 35th anniversary, and they do like to have some sort of Kirby release each year, with a couple exceptions. So I think another high-profile spin-off alongside Air Riders would make a lot of sense for pushing the Kirby brand forward. It seems like something that Nintendo and HAL would want to do, and it would also work perfectly with the Switch 2's mouse controls as well. And it would also make more sense than a remaster of Rainbow Curse, as at this stage in the Switch 2's lifespan, I think they want to push more new original games than remasters. Because I think it would be kind of weird, like, porting a Wii U game directly to Switch 2 and not having anything for Switch 1, even though it would make sense with the control scheme. It would just kind of raise some eyebrows for people who aren't aware. So I think a brand new game would just make quite a lot of sense. And I think it could be called Kirby in the Digital Curse, and could be themed around computers and drawing software. Kind of the play into the whole mouse control thing. I think a cute little motif like that would make sense, and the villain could be called Glixia, kind of building off of like the Dracia and Glacia thing they did in the previous games. So this is something that I definitely think is possible, and I kind of hope happens, because I really like Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. It's really one of the most underrated Kirby games in my opinion. Moving on to October, I think we're gonna get a Pikmin 4 Switch 2 edition to celebrate Pikmin's 25th anniversary. I know they don't need to do something for every single anniversary, but I don't know, Nintendo does like to do a lot with Pikmin. They did like a little Pikmin blowout last year with the Pikmin Bloom update adding Ice Pikmin, and the little Pikmin 4 update they did as well. Maybe they'll also do like a Pikmin 3 Deluxe update alongside it. Actually, ideally that should be earlier because that game has some problems on the Switch 2. But in a Pikmin 4 Switch 2 edition, it could add like a new side campaign with a new location, maybe add like bingo battles or something similar to like the older multiplayer modes for Pikmin games, like alongside Dandori battles, and also mouse controls as well. And online multiplayer would also be fun too. So I definitely think they could do something for Pikmin 4, at the very least another little update, or an update that actually adds upgrades for the Switch 2. I'm just hoping for something Pikmin for the 25th anniversary. I know Bloom will do something at least, but Pikmin 4 would also be nice to have like some kind of update or something like that. But moving on to the big game for October, I think it's finally time that we'll get Luigi's Mansion 4. It's been 7 years since Luigi's Mansion 3, and 4 years since Next Level Games' last game with Mario Strikers Battle League, and that game had barely any content. And for the record, they didn't work on the Luigi's Mansion 2 HD remaster. That was Tantalus Media. So I think Luigi's Mansion 4 is definitely on the table. But my prediction for it is that it will be much larger in scope than the previous games, maybe even semi-open world. I know there's a lot of open world fatigue among Nintendo fans, but I think they could handle this in a pretty interesting way. Maybe kind of have the approach of like multiple different areas like Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3, but contain them into one single map. Kind of like how Luigi's Mansion 1 was, kind of bringing the ideas of all three games together. That would make a lot of sense for some kind of semi-open world game. I just think that makes a lot of sense to me. And for its art style, I think it could go for a style comparable to the original game, but with a Next Level Games twist. Maybe kind of retain the exaggerated animations that were in Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3, and also the exaggerated art style as well, but kind of twist it in a way to kind of be a callback to the original Luigi's Mansion. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the styles in Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3, but it would be nice to see like a bit of a return to form for the art style. Luigi's Mansion 3 already kind of was a return to form in terms of its character designs, so it would be nice to see that taken even farther with Luigi's Mansion 4. Since like it has been a trend for a lot of Mario games lately that kind of go back to the older art style, like since Super Mario Bros. Wonder kind of had an art style comparable to like the older 2D Mario artwork. Same goes for Mario Kart World, and even the remakes of Thousand Year Door and Super Mario RPG retained their original art styles to a degree. So I think Luigi's Mansion 4 could possibly go with a style comparable to the original Luigi's Mansion. It would just be pretty interesting. But moving on to November, I think we will see the Zelda 40th anniversary game for this month, and my prediction for that is the Ocarina of Time remake. We've seen a lot of rumblings, rumors, and different things about it. I know it could be complete BS, like a lot of Nintendo rumors, and this really does seem like the most Nintendo hire this man-esque idea for a remake. It's literally that Buzz Lightyear meme, like, we want an Ocarina of Time remake, but it kind of makes a lot of sense at this point. Like, if Nintendo were to remake a Zelda game for the 40th anniversary, it would be Ocarina of Time. Just like, it just makes a lot of sense. And it wouldn't just be an HD remaster like Wind Waker or Twilight Princess. It would probably be like by the Zelda team, like a big, full remake of it. Or it could be Grezzo. It could be like co-developed by the Zelda team and Grezzo. Actually, I think that's most likely what it's going to be. Since Grezzo hasn't released a game since 2024, I believe. I mean, they might have worked on projects outside of Nintendo, but at least for Nintendo, it's been 2024. So it could have been co-developed by the Zelda team and Grezzo. So that's definitely possible. Actually, and Grezzo worked on the remaster for Ocarina of Time on the 3DS, as well as Majora's Mask. So it would make a lot of sense if they were developing this as well. So now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, an Ocarina of Time remake does make a lot of sense, even though it is like the most stereotypical thing that Zelda could get. So I definitely think it's possible. And we could even get like a special edition for it, a Switch 2 console variant. Nintendo would definitely make it a big deal, considering how popular Ocarina of Time is. And I know it might be a bit hypocritical of me to say that I don't think Super Metroid is getting a remake because it's on Switch Online. But I think an Ocarina of Time remake could bring a bit more to the table and be more of a reimagining. That's why I think it's slightly more likely than a Super Metroid remake happening over Metroid 6. But who knows? Both could happen, but I just think an Ocarina of Time remake as a higher profile release would make a lot of sense. But finally, the last major game that I could see released this year is Pokemon Gen 10. I mean, we've seen leaks for it. It's gonna be Pokemon's 30th anniversary. Like, come on, it's gonna happen this year. But I think it's gonna be a Switch 2 exclusive, like the leaks suggest, and I think it will look a lot better than the previous two games, but still a bit lackluster. I think it will still look like a Switch 1 game, probably comparable to OG Breath of the Wild or Xenoblade 2 visuals, and I think there will be some controversy that spurs off of that, like, why is it a Switch 2 exclusive if it looks like a Switch 1 game? We're already seeing that with Pokopia, since Pokopia's visuals kind of look like Switch 1 visuals, but I think it would definitely be much more exemplified here, considering the fact that it would be a mainline Pokemon game. But I do think it will have a better reputation than Scarlet and Violet and Zaza if things go well, but people will be skeptical of it at first. I might be skeptical of it at first, but we'll see. But anyways, those are my predictions for Nintendo's 2026 schedule. I definitely think this year will be decent at the very least, but there's definitely a good chance that it will be good. We already know a lot of games, and a lot of them are very solid titles, like Tomodachi Life, Rhythm Heaven, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. I think there's a lot of interesting titles, and Fire Emblem as well. Fire Emblem is pretty exciting. So I definitely think there's a lot of interesting titles so far. I think the first half of the year will be more niche titles, and then in the second half, we'll get into more of like the heavy hitters and things like that. But anyways, let me know what you think down in the comments, and what are your predictions for Nintendo's 2026. But thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Blue Sky if you want to. Stay perky!